Hello and welcome to the Dailies on Echo Television International, the program that keeps you updated with what is happening around Nigeria and also outside the country from the Nigerian newspaper. I am Sela Elisha Dasham and I'll be doing this together with Rachel Tanzi. Good morning.
Morning, Celia.
Alright, we're live on Facebook and on YouTube. You can do well to drop your comment, drop your thought of any of the story that is of interest to you this morning. And we will be going straight into the paper, starting with the metrics.
On the Matrix newspaper, Zenith Bank and Africa CFTA signed agreement to develop Smart African CFTA portal. You can start with the details on the front page and continue on page 9. Nigerian creator get paid as Twitter rolls out ad revenue. How Niger coup worsens Nigeria's declining petroleum market. The writer under the story, Niger mega road project threatened. Over 1,000 tickets and over 1,000 trucks trapped. You can start with the details on the front page and continue inside the paper. The big story on the metrics, economic reforms. Tinubu inaugurates Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policies. Targets 20 trillion naira tax gap, 18% tax to GDP in 3 years, vows to end over-reliance on borrowing. Subsidy removal increases Nigeria's revenue to GDP by 2%. A statement coming from the World Bank. You can find more details on page 2. Federal government resident doctors to hold crucial meeting to avert strike. Okonjo-Iweala Tinubu is aware Nigerians are suffering. You can find more details on page 2. Still on the paper, illegal deduction. CBN recovers refunds 1.5 billion naira to customers. You can find more details on page 10. And on ministerial nominations, Senate reveals next step for El Rufai and 2 others. Federal government backs down and withdraws contempt proceeding against organized labor. You can find the details on page 9, and that's all the news on the Matrix newspaper.
On this day newspaper, Zenith Bank AFCFTA signed agreement to develop Smart AFCFTA portal. You can find detail of that on the front page and continue to read on page 10. Lawan Yari Tambuwal Oshomole Musa, others emerge Senate Committee Chairman. You can find detail on page 35. Tinubu mourns as tribute pour in for Pastor Taiwo Odukoya. You can find more detail of that story on page 37. And on the issue of Niger, President orders physical sanction against individuals and entities. With the writer says action not based on religion, entity, insists military option not ruled out. ECOWAS leaders meet tomorrow as Niger Junta reject UN, AU and other delegations. You can find detail of the story inside the paper. US diplomats deny access to Bazoum Tachina. You can find more of that story on the front page and continue to read on page 10. The reason why they refuse to allow the delegations to get into the country. Tinubu vows to end Nigerians' over-reliance on borrowing for public expenditure. You can find detail of the story with the writer saying set 18% tax to GDP target by 2026. Nation's revenue generation falls below African standard, says Oyedele. Reveals Nigerian lost 70. I take that, writer. Nigeria reveals Nigeria lose 20 trillion naira annually to tax system gaps, and then pledges committee will get rid of multiple taxation. You can find detail of that. We've seen the picture stories showing Okonjo-Iweala meets Tinubu, and also another picture story showing the 8th annual Zenith Bank International Trade Seminar on non-oil export. You can find detail of all the story on the front page and continue inside the paper.
On Blueprint newspaper, over 36 million killed globally by non-communicable diseases annually. Kuka to Northerners, let's fight insecurity together. Tinubu met Nigeria, broke a statement coming from Akpabio, and you can find more details on page 5. The big story on the paper, to end over-reliance on borrowing. Tinubu hints on critical tax reforms to meet Nigeria's needs. Sets 18% tax to GDP target in 3 years. Our tax laws are outdated, a statement coming from Oyedele. We need grassroots programs to create jobs, a statement coming from Okonjo Iweala. You can find more details on page 6. Zenith Bank partners Africa CFTA to fund smart portal with $1 million. Go back to work, Nigerians dying. Federal government begs resident doctors, urges NARD to await minister's inauguration over residency fund. You can find the details on page 6. And in Niger, amid mounting opposition, ECOWAS work out more sanctions, Tinubu explains. We have Siemens receding profits tells Nigeria's electricity deal. More details can be found on page 23. And in Lagos, police arrest woman using 10-year-old niece as drugs courier. You can find more details on page 9. And that's all the news on Blueprint newspaper.
On Daily Sun newspaper, ministerial list reps deputy speaker joins senators in seeking more slot for the southeast. The writer says Senate transmit confirmed list of the 45 ministerial nominees to Tinubu. You can find detail on page 8. The big story, Nigerians to pay more tax, with the writer as federal government announces plans to increase tax to GDP by 18%. We will end over reliance on borrowing coming from the President Tinubu. Also, we have President Mr. Okonjo Iweala part over economy. Tinubu aware of suffering of Nigerians, says the World Trade Organization DG. And also we have other stories here. Police identify arrest personnel for killing Rivers resident. Troops kill 3 bandits, recover arms in Kaduna. You can find that on page 4. Apabio names Kalu, Yari, Lawan, Tambuan and others committee chairman. ECOWAS imposes sanction on individuals and entity associated of the Niger Republic coup. Suspend sanction restriction, ACF tells Tinubu. Resident doctors meet Senate president may call off strike today, so we keep our fingers crossed. We remember they went on strike over 2 weeks ago, so we hope something positive will come out of the talks today. The last story on the paper here, talking about Pastor Taiwo Odukoya dies at 67 in US. You can find detail on page 8, and that's all on Daily Sun newspaper.
On leadership newspaper, Sultan Kuka blame insecurity on injustice and bad governance. 19 countries to benefit from ECOWAS $338.7 million off-grid electricity project. You can find more details of the story on page 7. Niger coup-linked individuals, entities slammed with new sanctions. The big story on leadership, maize shortage. Nigeria's $4.2 billion poultry sector on brink of collapse. And we have an infograph showing what this entails. We see that the more the birds get to feed, the more eggs they lay, and the less food they have, the lesser eggs they lay. And we have more statistics showing what it means and the decline as it is currently in the country. You can find more details on page 4. Still on leadership newspaper, Pastor Taiwo Odukoye, 67, dies in U.S. Federal government begs residents to shelf strike. Job racketeering, 35 MDAs and coalition reps probe. You can find the details on page 7, and that's all the news on leadership newspaper.
Rachel, I'd like us to talk a little about the big story, talking
Yes.
about maize shortage. And sorry, I would like to just read those little statistics that was there, where we have 25 million. The sector crisis put over 25 million jobs at risk as a result of that. And then we're having 12 million Nigerian maize production declined to 12 million metric tons in 2023 from 12.5 million metric tons in 2019. And then we're having a crate of eggs now sell between 2,400 and 2,600. It was earlier sold at 1,009. And then we're having an average serving of 2 eggs contain 82% of daily vitamin D requirement. And then we are having here that says about 82% that 600 poultry farms may close shop in Delta State. And I know that's just one out of many. And I just had to read it because it broke my heart. We remember with the issue of the anthrax that is around, a lot of people are no longer consuming the beef anymore. people are kind of afraid of actually eating that, and then people were kind of maybe falling back on the
Sure.
chickens and
Yeah.
also on eggs. And then right now we're seeing that maize production is really really cutting short. And if you recall, there was a time we were chatting here during the dailies, and we said not only are poultry farmers being affected, but we also have manufacturers that depend on that,
Mm-hmm.
especially talking about cereal. A lot of people are actually complaining, businesses are closing down, cost of production is
Yes.
becoming very expensive, and no wonder we've seen that poultry farmers are complaining. You remember when the eggs went down to as even as low as 1,000, 1,005, because people were not actually patronizing. These poultry farmers were running on loss because they had to give away the eggs at a giveaway price, because we know the way it is. At a period of time, it might spoil if you do not consume it. Now we've seen that we're having about 25 million jobs at risk as a result of that. Now the question here is, what is the nation going to do to avert this? Rachel, I was coming back during the weekend and it broke my heart to see the flood that actually destroyed a lot of maize farm. So that is just to say one out of many other places. We will recall last year we had that in Nasarawa State, where there was a flood that destroyed a lot of farm, not just the maize but even rice. And then people have a way of actually managing, looking some of using some of the chaff coming from either the maize or from the rice to mix with the feed and then give their chickens. But then we've seen that right now even the maize is very very scarce. So I'm looking forward to what is the nation going to do about this. If you remember, we kept hammering on the fact that we need to give the agri sector a lot of attention. If
Of
we
course.
have done that, I don't think our poultry farmers will be complaining. Yes, we know that a lot of things are tied. Issue of petrol, it has affected transportation and all of that. But then something needs to be done to save this farm, because if we are not really really careful, not only are poultry farmers going to complain, even individuals are complaining. A measure of maize right now is running between 700 to 800 per measure. So what are we going to see? I'm happy that the DG talking about Ngozi Nkojwe said that the president is aware of the hardship of Nigeria, but I'm hoping that beyond just words, we'll see actions to back up this word. If you really know what Nigerians are going through, what are you going to do about that? Not only are we talking about maize, even we are having the issue of the we're talking about not swine fever. Swine is for pigs. We're talking about even bird flu that affected a lot of birds that have died. So quite a lot needs to be done to see what we can do to rescue these poultry farmers, because if we're having more people losing their jobs, then that is really really a disaster for us as a nation.
Celeste, some weeks back, I clearly stated that until the Nigerian government wake up and adopts new method of agriculture, farming, be it for crops, be it for livestock farming, we are going to suffer a lot, and we will continue to see some of this chaos when it comes to food and agriculture. Because now, what is the major reason behind this drop in the poultry sector is maize, and it still goes back to agriculture. And then until we wake up and we adopt several means of farming, several ways of production, we are going to keep suffering. Because let's talk about the raw materials that are being used to produce certain things like rubber. It's still agriculture, Sele. Are we going to talk about cotton? If we want to talk about textile, it's still agriculture, because these plants are being grown. Are we going to talk about skin to use to make either our shoes and all of that? It's still agriculture, because we need the livestock that we will be able to get this skin from. And then are we going to talk about food? That is one thing that is being consumed daily. And I believe that one of the greatest mistake that the Nigerian government have done is neglecting agriculture, because it is in our face every day. Every finished product that is being consumed that you see in the market is from agriculture. Even our wood, forestry is still under agriculture, because these are being plants that are grown, and it all needs preservation, reservation, and all of that. So one of the biggest mistakes that I believe the Nigerian government have done is neglecting agriculture, because it is one sector that fuels everything that happens in an economy, be it food, be it the finished product that we see, and all of that. A lot of the things that we consume are plants that are being grown and all of that, because we will want to say we have few, a lot, let's say when it comes to metal and all of that. Yes, these are natural resources that are out there. But if we're going to look at the basic things that are being consumed on a daily basis, every single day, in a thriving economy, all boils down to agriculture. So I'm looking forward to a Nigeria that will wake up and see the need to do whatever it takes. Because if we were to have a situation where farming was done season in and season out, I believe maize wouldn't be a problem. If we were going to adopt a farming method that a less rather hectare of land will be used to produce a large amount of crops. If we were to adopt new types of seeds that give in more production and all of that, all of these will be able to solve the problems that we are having. So yes, we need our government to wake up and step in for farmers in this country, give them all the support they need, give them all the resources they need, and the government itself needs to step in. Apart from private individuals that are into agriculture, the government needs to step in also. I know that they are doing something about it, but they need to do more because it's obvious that what they're doing currently is not good enough. So there's a need for them to up their game more than what they're doing as it is
Well, we
now.
hope the government will realize that, because looking at the fact that eggs is one of the basic nutrients we need, it's a basic requirement. So I hope that we do something to rescue that farm.
We hope
Well,
so.
let's take a look at the Guardian newspaper. Federal government, National Assembly meet aggrieved doctors ahead of planned protest today. You can find detail on page 3. Fear of sovereign debt defaults takes toll on banks and economic outlook. You can see that on page 6, where we're having countries with the highest default rates as of 2022. So you can take a look at the sovereign debt vulnerability ranking of various governments, and then we've seen the government bond yield, and then we've seen the interest expense as of 2022, and then the government debt of 2022. So you can take a look at the countries that are the highest, and we see Nigeria is over there with about this vulnerability of about 24. So you know what that means. So we hope that you do take a proper look at this and see how it would affect our country, Nigeria. And still on the issue of the coup in Niger, military option open as Tinubu orders more sanction against individuals and entities. And we are also having Tinubu Sanwo-Olu members Mon Odukoya's passing. You can find detail of that. Tinubu moves to end over reliance on borrowing of public expenditure. And we're having optimizing Tigress potentials amid the MBBF's basket case. For those who are interested in the issue of the basketball of Nigerians, you can do well to read more of that story on page 4. And that's all on the Guardian newspaper.
On Nigerian Tribune, we have Kano Yobe top 27 affected state as diphtheria kills 137, infects 1,534 persons in 14 months. This is a report coming from NCDC. Nomination open for 2023 Obafemi Awolowo Leadership Prize. You can find the details on page 3. The big story on the paper, ECOWAS slams more sanction on Niger. The writer on the story, Tinubu directs CBN to impose financial penalties on individuals, entities linked to coups. Lift sanction on Niger, dialogue with Nigerian coups, ACF Council regional body. Military junta refuses ECOWAS, AU and UN delegation entry. Pastor Taiwo Adukoye dies in US. 44-year-old woman plants drug in her 10-year-old niece panties to evade police arrest. You can find the details on page 29. On alleged job racketeering, victims recount ordeal, say they paid millions into ex-FCC officers' account. You can find the details on page 13. Nigerians are dying in numbers and ongoing strike. The federal government is begging NARD. You can find the details on page 4. We have man jumps into lagoon from Lekki Koyi Link Bridge. The details can be found on page 26. And then we have a picture story where we can see the student that will also be representing part of the delegates for the Fiscal Policy Committee by the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, a 1400 level student of UI. And that's all the news on Nigerian Tribune.
Well, I hope as the federal government are saying that National Association of Resident Doctors to call off strike. They know the right thing to do, so the doctors will come out. You don't just use blackmail to get the doctors to get back to work, and then you don't do what
Emotional
you are
blackmail,
supposed to do,
yes, Ellen.
because that is what I see on the paper right
That's
here.
it.
If Nigerians are dying in their numbers, then the government know what they need to do. Fix the facilities. It's not just about their pay. Rachel, you go to some of these hospitals and then it will really, really break your heart to see the situation of the hospitals. Either we're having fewer doctors, either we're having that things you need it's not there. You have to
You
go
have to
outside the
go,
hospital
yes,
to go buy
exactly.
what you need
Or
to be
take a
treated.
test as well.
You get it.
Yes.
So if the federal government knows that Nigerians are dying, then
yeah.
what they need
What
to
are
do
you
is
doing?
fix the health
Fix the
sector.
system,
That is the
exactly.
right thing to do, and
Of
not
course.
just to tell the doctors to get back. Well, let's just see where this whole conversation,
Go.
lead at the end of the day.
True, Sally.
Well, let's take a next look at the next paper, which is the New Telegraph newspaper. Under USSD, we have respite as CBN intervene in banks, 150 billion naira debt to telcos, with the rider naira depreciates to 900 naira to a dollar at the parallel market. You can do well to find more. Well, it's really breaking my heart. I don't know which one is going higher. Either is it the fuel that will get to 1,000 naira before we realize it, or is it the dollar that will get to 1,000? I don't know which will first which, but I hope the government intervenes quick and fast about that. And on the issue of electricity bill, Niger, Togo, Benin owe Nigeria 43.4 billion naira. We hope that you can find more of that story on page 4. Also, 9 ex-governors emerged chairman as Sapabio unveils standing committee. You can find all of that on page 4. Tinubu meets Okonjo-Iweala, seek ways to address hardship in Nigeria. And coming from Sanwo-Olu of Lagos State, Lagos seeking 10-year, $10 billion power funding. You can find that on page 5 and 7. Fountain of Life Pastor Taiwo Odukoya dies at 67. Send our condolences. You can find more of that on page 4 and 6. The big story, federal government, NMA begs resident doctors. Shelf strike, Nigerians dying can't care for themselves. Doctors' body urges speedy conflict resolution. And then we are having Net Council plan national protest as Senate intervenes. You can find that on page 3 and 29. And on funding, federal government to secure schools with 144.8 billion naira 3-year investment plan. You can find all that too on page 3. Labour to National Assembly, sacrifice for Nigerians, survival, cut down on your earnings. You can find that on page 5. We've been talking over and over on the cuts in the cost of governance. We're seeing Labour also saying the same to the National Assembly. Tinubu vows to end cycle of borrowing for public spending. Set 18% tax to GDP ratio target in 3 years. You can find all of that on page 3. Still on the issue of the coup in Niger, ECOWAS issued 7-day ultimatum, not Nigeria, coming from Tinubu. Order CBN to sanction entity and individuals with links to the coups to host regional meeting tomorrow. And then stop fighting proxy war for Western countries. ACF tell ECOWAS and the federal government once sanction lifted. And then we have OPS list implication of military option and sanctions. All of that can be found on page 2, 5, and 7. And on the issue of the crude oil theft, Tinubu malt splitting, Tambolo's pipeline surveillance contract. And then we are having more of that on page 2 and 7. We also have a study here that says microwaving plastic release billions of toxin particles. Well, for those who are fond of microwaving on plastic, this is the implication of that. So I think everybody should actually be very interested in this and then read more of that study on page 31. And that's all the New Telegraph newspaper.
On the Nation newspaper, APC defends president's choice of ministers. Resident doctors set to end strike. You can find the details on page 4. We have Zenith Bank signed memorandum of understanding with Africa CFTA on trade promotion. Fountain of Life Pastor Taiwo Odukoyi dies at 67. You can find the details on page 4. The big story on the paper, federal government begins reforms to end 20 trillion naira yearly tax losses. CBN hits Niger Republic junta with sanctions. You can start with the details on the front page and continue On page 2, we have WTO to boost digital trade, job racketeering victims, thousand House of Reps, and then we have more details on page 6. And at the downside of the paper, Pope cautions on dancers of artificial intelligence. I take that again. We have the Pope cautions on dangers of artificial intelligence. You can find more details on page 27, and that's all the news on the Nation newspaper.
Right, look at the Punch newspaper. Labour reject Bajabia Miller on subsidy negotiation, writes the National Assembly. 120 billion naira debt, banks offer telcos repayment plan. You can find more of that on page 22. The big story on Niger Republic, ECOWAS plan, fresh sanction on Burkina Faso, Mali, UN talks fail. ECOWAS leaders meet Thursday after Boch AU, UN, US plan visit to Niamey. Over 100,000 IDP stranded in Niger, businesses grounded in Sokoto and Castina borders. You can find more of that story on page 2. Tinubu said 30-day tax reform target UI student mixed the panel. You can see her within a picture with the president. You can do well to read more of that on page 21. Edo PDP sue for peace between Obaseki and the deputy. You can find that on page 8. Father blames hospital for elevator death. Doctors buried. You can find that on page 28. And we have 35 MDA shunned reps job racketeering probe. You can find more of that story on page 7. And that's all on the Punch newspaper.
On the Daily Times, Tinubu ordered CBN to slam financial sanctions on Nigerian leaders and associates. The big story on the paper, Buhari plunged Nigeria into financial mess, broke with over 30 trillion naira debt. A statement coming from Akpabio. Labour rejects Bajabia Mila. You can start with the details on the front page. Nigeria moves to close 20 trillion naira tax gap. We have Okotete's ministerial nomination raises bad blood between Urubos and Isikiri. You can start with the details on the front page and continue inside the paper. At the downside, we have Apabio names 50 APC and others in 74 standing committees. You can find the details on page 10, and that's all the news on the Daily Times newspaper.
All right, before we continue further with the review on the paper this morning, we'd love to take a break so we can, take our bread, let you chew the stories, and then when we come back, we'll open the phone lines and also let you to air your views of any of the story that is of interest to you. Please stay tuned with us.
Make your everyday informative, make your everyday count. Know your world, daily affairs, national and international, with authentic news events as they unfold on Global News and Zuma Nigeria, Monday to Friday at 1 p.m.
Welcome back. If you're just tuning in, it's still the Dailies on Echo Television International. We've been looking at quite a number of stories, from the coup in Niger, the meeting that ECOWAS will be having tomorrow, and then we're also seeing where the DG of the World Trade Organization has said that the president, talking about President Tinubu, is aware of the hardship of Nigerians, and then resident doctors will be having, possibly they have shelved the protest they were hoping to have today, and then we are hoping that they will call off the strike soon. I still have Rachel Tensley with me in the studio. Thanks so much,
You're
Rachel.
welcome, Sarah.
All right, at this moment, our numbers are displayed on your screen. Do well to call us. We'd love to hear what your thoughts are, what your contribution is concerning any of the story that is of interest to you. Please do remember to turn down the volume of your TV set when you call us, because we really love to hear what you have to say, and other viewers will also love to be part and also hear what you have to say. Let's remember to be civil with our language, no use of vocal language or any other thing. So we await your calls as we continue with the paper review. Let's take a look at the first newspaper. APC clears Adamu Omusere of financial recklessness. You can find detail of the story inside the paper. Still on the issue of the Niger, ECOWAS imposed fresh sanction as ACF kicks caution Tinubu. Forum urges president to lift sanction on Niger, explore dialogue with Chuta. As CBN implement regional body directive against Kupi's associates and others. Niger coup plotters name economics as the new prime minister. You can do well to find detail of all that inside the paper. Tinubu vows to end Nigerians' over-reliance on loans. You can find that inside the paper as well. Tinubu told us he stayed in two-bedroom flat, flies own private jet coming from the NLC president. You can do well to find more detail of that story. Man dives into Lagos Lagoon. This is really a sad one, the issue of hardship, and we've seen suicide resurfacing again. Hope something will be done to stop that from, going on. And also, without working, I got salaries after paying 1 million naira for job slot at the FCC. Man confesses still on the issue of the Federal Character Commission, probe that is going on presently in the House of Representatives. Also, why police stop issuance of gun license coming from the IGP. And on Biafra, Simon Akpan has gone man in Nnamdi Kanu's family. You can find more of that story. The last story on the paper, man in court for allegedly stealing from own mother. You can do well to find more detail of all of that story, and that's all on the First News newspaper.
On Punch Sports Extra, we have debut wonders, Falcons' new kids on the block. France ends Morocco's dream. Colombia set up England in quarter-final clash. You can find the details on page 3. We have Chelsea rests number 9 jersey. We have Joshua focus on Helena's win. Osimhen Cup's ankle injury. We have Ikuku out for 4 months. We have Kane set Sunday deadline over future. Arsenal can't rival City. A statement coming from the Burnie. You can find more details on page 4. Usman the Kid Ronaldinho. We have the big story that says Olozi forgives Lauren James. There's no hard feelings, it's just a game. If you watch the match and you saw the foul, yes, this is what this story is all about. And she's saying there's no hard feeling, it's just a game. At the downside of the paper, PSG confirms Ramos signing. Chelsea doubt Vlahovic Lukaku swap. You can find more details on page 6. And that's all the news on Punch Sports Extra.
Alright, let's take a look at what the business world looks like from Business Day newspaper. Niger coup worsen Nigerians' declining petrol market. Tinubu asks CBN to slam more sanction on Niger. You can find that on page A3 of the Business Day newspaper. Pension non-remittance give workers tension. You can find more of that story inside the paper. Inflation, rent hike land more people in court. Inflation, rent hike land more people in court. You can find more of that inside. Rina Wakama, road to becoming first female basketball coach winner. You can find that story on page 21. Meet best friends building Nigerians Uber for farmer. You can find all of that story also inside the paper. And that's all on the Business Day newspaper.
On Vanguard, starting with the big story, federal government reliance on borrowing must end. A statement coming from Tinubu. You can find the details on page 5. The writer under the story promises to end Nigeria's over-reliance on loans, set 18% tax to GDP target in 3 years, inaugurate Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policies and Tax Reforms, subsidy removal rises Nigeria revenue by GDP by 2%, a statement coming from the World Bank. We have Edo PDP to wade into Obaseki-Shaibu rift. And on Niger coup, ECOWAS ultimatum not Nigeria's mandate, statement coming from Tinubu. Pastor Taiwo Dukoye dies at 67. Still on the paper, Tinubu committed to improving citizens' welfare, a statement coming from Okonjo Iweala, and we are waiting to see what he will do to improve the welfare of Nigerians. Nigerians are dying. Federal government begs doctors on their strike. You can find more details on page 3. Level health and informed decisions. We have rule of a strong and independent judiciary in nation. That is the Alphabet Balola column, which you can find on page 22, and also a sports column on page 22, where we can see France said Africa's last hope packing. And that's all the news on Vanguard newspaper.
All right, before we go further, Richard, I just want to hear your take on this. Here, we've seen the federal government have taken a step to say so that we stop relying so much on borrowing by increasing our tax to about 18% GDP. Now, what is the implication for Nigerians? I remember there are times where we always say you pay tax in various ways, VAT, whether it's biscuit, toothpaste, however it is, we've already been paying tax. But right now, we've seen that I think from last year, the government have been saying how they can stop borrowing and increase our tax. Now, what do you feel the implication is going to be on the common man at a time where we're still looking at hardship, biting hard on them, and then tax will be increased eventually?
Well, it just means an increase in the prices of goods and services, because when it comes to telcos, for example, the value added tax was at 7.5%. And then if we're going to see an increase, whatever it might be at the end, we might not see it up to and that 18%, of course, because of regulations and all of that. But yes, it might no longer be 7.5% when it comes to services like our with the telecommunication companies and all of that. Yes, but then even on the products we consume, food, there are value added tax. We are going to see an increase with that. So we are no longer dealing only with inflation. We are not only dealing with the price of the value of the naira, which affect inflation. We're not only going to struggle with with subsidy removal, the fuel pump price going high. We are also going to find ourselves dealing with taxes going high. So there's going to be a review on all of these things, and services will also review. This is now the tax that the federal government is expecting us to remit back to them. So this is how much we are going to increase on our service, that is the price. And also when it comes to goods and all of that, so automatically it means that goods and services are going to become more expensive than they are, because we're not only going to be dealing with inflation, but we are going to be seeing that we also have to pay tax even on salaries and all of that, whatever it's being deducted as tax. We are going to also see, because we have the federal inland revenue services, be it at the state level or at the federal government level, there will be increase on tax. And it will.
Let's take this call. Hello, good morning.
Hello.
Good morning. We are with you.
Hello, good morning.
Morning.
According to the paper, they say our president said they know the suffering of the Nigeria. You know the suffering of the Nigeria. What of the solution? We know, all of us, we know we are suffering. Tell us the solution. We vote you there to know the solution. Let's go through where we say Buhari spent. Buhari spent what of all of them, they put Nigeria into debt because they are APC. Coming to APC again. Now it's coming to tell us like they are not aware, or the APC, they are not in the same party with the Buhari. Now they are spending everything to Buhari. This is not how to rule. If they know they cannot do it, let them come out. Another party will take over. Then they are blaming Buhari. After now, Tinubu will blame, they will blame Tinubu. They are APC. They have their manifesto. APC manifesto is the same thing. The same manifesto of Buhari is the same manifesto of Tinubu. Let them not to confuse us. Secondly, according to the doctors, these doctors, this thing, Nigeria, okay, see, many doctors are coming to this small country, this Benin Republic. The place I go there 4 years today, now more doctor there. That is not the way. My people, see, there is not I get them, but plan. Nigeria get mood, but Nigeria don't have plan. All these small countries, they don't get mood, but they have plan. Okay, Tinubu is, they are talking to, they know they suffer from Nigeria. What of your plan? No, see, start at the plan at the same time, not talking. We tell you, we know we are suffering. We know we are suffering. That's why we vote in to reduce the suffering. That is to reduce the suffering. Don't tell us we are suffering. We know that we are suffering. Secondly, what of the issue of tax? We are suffering. You increase this thing. You remove subsidy. Then now you want to add tax again. But you say we are suffering. Oh, no. These people, they don't have plan. That's the only thing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, Alex. So yes, it just means that when we'll see the custom also increasing their tax, every agency and body that is giving that is with the responsibility of generating tax for the federation and remitting it, we will see that there will be slight increase, and we don't know how much it will be. But yes, if you want to increase your tax to 18% to GDP in 3 years, then we are going to be tax centered in our revenue generation, because we can see that even in the past we've seen that allocations from the FAAC has increased. These are all tax revenues, statutory tax, we have value added tax, and every other tax, be it for most especially non-oil imports into the country, and even exportation and all of that. So yes, it just means that goods and services will
All
go
right,
high.
let's say this call. Hello, good morning.
Anybody that know the right thing, let him do the right thing. Let him not blame this party or another party.
Hello, can you reduce the volume of your TV set, please?
So
Hello.
in process of blaming this party, blame another party is not the right thing. Let him focus and pick on the normal person that can control the economy of Nigeria. That is what he's supposed to do. It's not to blame this party or another party. If he knows, if he cannot be able to roll it, let him step down. Another person take over. That is it.
Thank you very much.
All right, thanks
Thank
so
you.
much.
Yeah. Thank you for that contribution. But yes, so Stella, that's just what it entails for us. If we are going to put our direction towards tax in the country, it just means that yes, we will not only deal with inflation, but tax.
also
Yes, exactly. We will see
increase
increasing,
and all that.
yes, in prices of goods and services because of tax.
You know, yesterday we saw in the papers already increase of hike in rent. No wonder the paper
Yes,
this morning is telling us it's landing a lot of people in court.
True.
We saw how much rent is right now from depending
On the
the
state,
state
your
and
location.
the region where
Exactly.
you are.
Yes.
And we saw, according to the paper, the lease was about like 1.5, which was
Yes.
in
I
part
think
of
in
the
Kano, I
south
think.
south countries. I think
Yes.
south states. So that was in Rivers or so. I think so.
They
That
had
was the least on the
1.8,
paper.
2.5 million and
Get it.
thereabouts.
So the
Yes.
rent is becoming quite high because a lot of things
Yes.
are, you know, the cost of even how much is the bag of cement right now. So a lot of things are actually going
Yes.
high. Well, we just hope for better things to come.
We hope so.
Well, let's take a look at the next paper, which is the Daily Independent newspaper. While artificial ripening fruits are dangerous to eat, coming from NAFDAC, and we've seen that on the paper where we saw the National Agency for Food and Drugs Administration was actually warning against, you know, buying and consuming fruits that are forced to ripe with certain chemicals. All right, let's take this call. Hello.
Wrong that Nigeria are owning everywhere. This situation is not the issue of the party affair, but the system of government that we apply to this. Because to me, before you will borrow, Senate are there, House of Representatives are there to permit you to do so. And I wonder why at times this will happen and later some people will come and blame a political party. It's not a party affair. PDP are there in the House of Reps, Senate are there, PDP are there. So why they're not complaining bitterly over this matter when they will borrow and chop, they will carry all the weight put to the Nigerian government and you are not seeing anything moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That is a valid point, Tella. It's not about pointing fingers, because we had House that approved these loans, that approved all of this debt that was taken. And now when you're pointing fingers, because we still have senators that are still in this in the
That were there
House
before.
that were there before, and you were still with the past administration, and you approved all of these loan and debt. So it's truly not about pointing fingers, but doing the right thing to make Nigeria better.
Well, let's watch and see what the 10th House of Assembly
Yes.
will do regards to
Let's
that,
see.
since they are accusing the past administration. Thank God it's the same party.
Yes, we have another.
All right, let's
call.
take this call.
I want to speak about I want to speak about the tax and what is happening in this country now. Is really unfortunate. The issue of tax, we have not solved the problem of removal of subsidy, and now we are dancing into tax another tax regime. The tax, is it excise duty? Is it industrial tax? Is it income tax? I don't know where we are heading to. But it's really unfortunate. Nigeria is really wobbling. But I think God will help us.
Thank you very
Hello.
much.
Okay.
God will
How
help.
do we come out of this problem? That is the big question. And those who know what to do, they won't allow them to come in. They are just appointing their friends and well wishers and all the rest of them. Those who cannot even turn the situation around. We are not now talking of PDP, PROP, PZ, and APC and all whatnot. What we want now is those who can perform, who can show us the way, and not those who are lamenting. It was my brother who made mistake. Now I'm here. I don't know how to do it. Can't you call those who was there before and ask them questions? Are they have they vamoosed? Have they gone to London? Have they gone to a place where they cannot be contacted? Let's be truthful to ourselves. We talk of the issue of Niger problem. We are still placing sanction and sanction instead of us facing our problem internally here. We are going up there. Now we see that the petroleum issue or Nigerian petroleum issue is being worsened because of Niger issue. So what do we do? The masses are dying. The MA or whatever they call them, the medical people are on strike. The NLC have been caught by their own reason. They are put aside. They are not doing anything any longer. What do we do? And that's the big question. Nigeria should ask themselves, what do we do in this time, in this trying time, in this hard time, in this dying time? Will Nigeria continue like this?
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. All right, still on Daily Independent newspaper, Niger Chuta report latest diplomatic mission at high-stakes ECOWAS summit looms, with the rider Tinubu ordered CBN to tighten fiscal sanction against Niger. You can find detail of the story inside the paper. The big story over reliance on borrowing for public spending over coming from President Tinubu. Inaugurate Committee on Tax Reform Nigeria to close 20 trillion naira tax gap. Subsidy removal increases revenue to GDP by 2% coming from the World Bank. You can start reading on the front page and continue inside the paper. Tinubu aware Nigerians undergoing hardship, Ogonjo weather and parts are saying. You can read more of that on page 29. Zenith Bank partners with AFCFTA for trade promotion in Africa. Sign agreement to develop smart AFCFTA portal. You can find that on page 7. APC backs Tinubu 48 ministerial nominee says it is constitutional. Well, we hope that that won't cost us much more when we're looking at cutting the cost of governance. OT launches Operation Crush against criminals in Abia. You can find that on page 29. Sanwo-Lumon Pastor Taiwo Odukoya on page 7. You can find more of that. Asman Air closes shop over Forex. Charges more may follow. We will soon return for operation. This is the writer coming from the Asman spokesman. You can find more of that story inside the paper. Separate Energy gas revenue grows to $63.7 million. You can find more of that on page 6, and that's all on Daily Independent newspaper.
On New National Star, the big story, ministerial screening. El-Rufai Okotete Danladi fails Senate confirmation over security report. Umahi Wike Tunji Ojo 42 others scale through. We have Northwest dominate list with 10 nominees, Southwest 9, Southeast 5, South 7, Northeast 8, and North Central 8. And we have Abba Yusuf Swezin Kano's first female chief judge. You can find more details on page 17. And then at the downside of the paper, we have Niger ECOWAS with first option as junta blocks of ultimatum. You can find more details on page 17, and that's all the news on New National Star.
All right, let's quickly round it up with the voice of liberty. Our economy is trapped. Tinubu admits vow to end Nigerians over reliance on loan. Tinubu meets Okonjo-Iweala apart at presidential villa. You can find more of that story. And on Niger coup, AFC call for more dialogue, lifting of economic sanction. The big story, ECOWAS imposes new sanction on Niger Republic coup leaders. The Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offenses Commission has stated that it is investigating allegation of corruption and abuse of office against former Attorney General of the Federation, which we saw yesterday, so more is still going on. And then we also have don't appoint Kobler as Transportation Minister, Maritime Workers to Tinubu. You can find more of that story. Also, we have Northern Consensus Group asks Gowon, IBB, Danjuma to caution Tinubu against Niger invasion. Blinken accuses Wega Group of taking advantage of Niger crisis. And the last story here, Serkin Hausawa of Lagos, Aminu Yaru, wife demand 10 billion naira each from DSS over human rights infringements. You can find more of that story inside the paper. And that's all on Voice of Liberty, and also how far we can go on the program this morning. Thanks so much, Rachel, for always doing this with me. Thank you to the crew members. Thank you to our callers who called in on the show this morning. Thank you to our producer, the general manager, and our supporters. We can do this without you. Until we come here again, do have a blessed Wednesday.